In broad daylight in a busy shopping mall, a young man's life was tragically taken. A needless act of disrespect led to a confrontation that ended in senseless violence. Today, we'll look at the case and analyse the poor decisions that cost one man his life and led to lengthy prison sentences for his killers. We'll also look at how the prosecution presented the case in court and how this stacks up against the evidence. Lakeside Shopping Mall is located in the town of Thurrock, Essex, just a few miles outside East London. With over 130,000 square metres of retail space, it's one of the largest shopping malls in Britain and is home to iconic brand names including Marks & Spencer, Apple and Nickelodeon. It also boasts an abundance of food outlets and restaurants, one of which is German Doner Kebab, where today's story unfolds. At around 4:20 PM on Thursday the 28th of April, Muhammad Khan, Brandon Luchmanzing and Luchmanzing's girlfriend Shannon Weston were sitting in front of the German Doner Kebab restaurant in Lakeside. Both Khan and Luchmanzing were wearing balaclavas. This style of dress is heavily associated with the drill scene and subculture, and I think that's a really important observation because there are a couple of themes here that are relevant. Firstly is the fact that within that subculture, there's almost a hypersensitivity to any perceived disrespect. The second thing that's important here is that within the drill subculture, there are certain things that are seen as a very specific show of disrespect. So I think it's very relevant that Khan and Luchmanzing would have been easily identifiable as drillers or wannabe drillers, people who subscribe to the drill subculture. At 4:23 PM, three guys enter the German Doner restaurant. Leading the trio is a man by the name of Michael Ugwa, a 29-year-old father of three from Rainham in East London. Ugwa, who is reportedly engaged to his partner and the mother of his children, was described by family members as kind, compassionate, caring and sensible. According to court records, as Ugwa was walking past Shannon Weston, he did something very interesting. Despite the fact that she was sat next to her boyfriend, Luchmanzing, Ugwa made an admiring or flirtatious comment towards her. In a different context, making admiring comments to a young lady in a restaurant could be seen as harmless, or romantic even. But in this context, it was seen as a violation, an attempt to get a reaction out of Khan and Luchmanzing. As a society, we all largely subscribe to certain norms and values. There's certain etiquette that we observe in particular social settings. In my view, it would be highly unusual to start a flirtatious verbal exchange with a woman who's quite clearly sitting in the company of two similarly aged guys. I think most of us would assume she's probably in a relationship with one of the guys, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate to approach her in a romantic or flirtatious way. As I touched on at the start of the video, within the drill subculture, there's certain things that are seen as a very specific violation, and approaching someone's girlfriend in front of them is one of those things. I believe Ugwa, perhaps emboldened by the presence of his two friends, decided to speak to Shannon Weston to get a rise out of Khan and or Luchmanzing. What's interesting is that we can actually see in the CCTV, Weston actually has her back facing Ugwa when he walks in. So it's unlikely to have been the case that Ugwa was so awestruck by her beauty that he just had to shoot his shot. It's much more likely that he approached Weston in what I would describe as an arrogant, bullying gesture towards Khan and Luchmanzing. Despite this, what happened next was completely unjustified. As noted later in court records, Khan and Luchmanzing decided to take Ugwa's actions as a form of challenge. A verbal confrontation started, but unbeknown to Ugwa, Muhammad Khan was in possession of a knife. During the verbal exchange, he pulled it out. While we don't have a complete CCTV record of the altercation, what we do see is that Ugwa makes another fateful decision. While his two friends leave the scene and head for the escalators, Ugwa decides to stay and fight. Since he was unarmed, he picked up a chair and looked to use this as a weapon. After launching the chair at Luchmanzing, Ugwa was chased down by Khan, who delivered a single stab wound under Ugwa's left armpit. He sadly passed away at the scene as a result of catastrophic blood loss and a collapsed lung. After a brief period on the run, Khan, Luchmanzing and Weston were arrested by police. Muhammad Khan and Brandon Luchmanzing were both jointly charged with the murder of Mr. Ugwa, and were also charged with affray for using violent or threatening behaviour in the moments before the killing. Shannon Weston was charged with 2 counts of assisting an offender by driving both Khan and Luchmanzing away from Lakeside Shopping Centre. The prosecution's case was as follows. Ugwa, a loving father, devoted family man and husband-to-be, paid a simple, innocent compliment to a lady who turned out to be Shannon Weston. The defendants, particularly Khan, were intent on murder, and they used this as an opportunity to set their sights on the victim. They said this was supported by the fact that Khan had carried a knife on his person for around 18 months leading up to the day of the incident. Both men were wearing balaclavas, and Khan had allegedly said to Weston earlier in the day that he felt like killing someone. Although it was Khan who delivered the fatal blow, the prosecution argued that Luchmanzing was equally guilty because he had full knowledge that Khan had pulled his knife out and that he intended to use it to take Ugwa's life. This was essentially a joint enterprise. Weston was alleged to have had full knowledge of the violence that had just taken place and was availed of that knowledge when she made the decision to use her car to drive the pair away from the scene. Her intention, they argued, was to help them to evade justice. The defence's case was as follows. Ugwa made inappropriate comments to Shannon Weston, and after being challenged by Khan and Luchmanzing, became aggressive and confrontational. Khan brandished the knife to get Ugwa to leave, before putting it away a short time later, only taking it out again once Ugwa threatened Brandon with a chair. Khan both acted in self-defense and stabbed Ugwa accidentally. As Ugwa turned to face him, he feared that he would be punched or have the knife taken off him. In reaching up instinctively, the weapon injured Ugwa. Muhammad Khan was found unanimously guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 27 years. Brandon Luchmanzing was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 13 years in prison, likely meaning he'll spend about 8.5 years in custody and the remainder in the community on licence. Shannon Weston was found guilty of assisting an offender and sentenced to 2 years in prison, suspended for 2 years. She was also ordered to undertake 200 hours of unpaid work. Assessing the sentences handed down, I think in terms of Khan, the sentence was absolutely fair. Anyone that's willing to carry a knife and is willing to stab somebody in the chest over something so trivial is clearly an extremely dangerous individual who needs to be locked away for a very long time. In terms of Luchmanzing, I was not of the view that he was equally culpable and equally responsible in this case as Khan was. Luchmanzing wasn't carrying a knife, he didn't stab anyone, and there was no indication that this was a planned out and targeted knife attack that he was aware of in advance. So I didn't see him as being equally culpable. He's clearly a dangerous individual, and it is right that he was locked away and received a significant custodial sentence. But I didn't necessarily feel that needed to be a life sentence or the same sentence as Muhammad Khan. In Weston's case, I think poor decisions were made on her part. I wasn't convinced from researching the case and reviewing the CCTV that's available that she necessarily was fully aware of the full extent of the violence that had just taken place. The full CCTV record actually shows her leaving as the violence really starts to pick up. That said, she obviously made some decisions in the aftermath of the event that left her open to prosecution. I think a suspended sentence and a significant amount of unpaid work was a fair outcome. But more importantly, what do you guys think? Having heard my assessment of the case, Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you feel I've missed in my analysis. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.